Good evening. Welcome to the broadcast. On one hand, there is determined Mutahi Kagwe with a voice of determination, willing to show a success scorecard in the end. But CS Kagwe has to carry the Kenyan public with him in the course of the pandemic. However, the government appears to have wasted the most critical resource from the onset since the first case was confirmed in the country in March 2020. Can the public mood match the hope on the horizon picture created by the government in responding to the COVID-19 pandemic in the country?
Watu wengi walianza na mtu moja, wakaenda tatu, wakaenda wengine wawili na tunaendelea.
Wale wanaongea ni wale watu wa propaganda. Hapa kwa soko sisi ukiangalia hata wewe mwenyewe unaona vile soko yetu iko smart na iko sawa. Kila mtu akiingia ananawa mkono, anavaa mask. So hiyo ni ile mambo ya borojo unasikia ati watu wamekufa Kawangware kwa ajili ya corona. Si kweli.
Really?
Also tonight, the World Health Organization says no country's healthcare infrastructure was prepared for COVID-19 since the first case was confirmed in the city of Wuhan in Hubei province in China. It also raises capacity question in the African continent, even as it pins that Africa will be the next epicenter of the pandemic. With the development of a vaccine now outdone by the superpower race and the rivalry between Beijing and Washington, can the World Health Organization weather this storm? Diana Rachel Mbogwa has that update here on the broadcast. In sports tonight, English London-based clubs West Ham United and Crystal Palace have called off or cancelled their Australian tour owing to the fears of the COVID-19 pandemic. Good evening. Welcome to the broadcast, day 23 of April 2020. 27 days since 27th of March 2020, when the dusk to dawn curfew effected in the country by the government. I'm Ayub Abdikadir Abdi. Our sign anchor tonight is Joyce Wairimo in the next 30 minutes. Good evening. Welcome to the broadcast. Thank you for joining us here on Ebru television. The short SMS code is 40920. The hashtag on Twitter is News Compass. Later we'll sample some of your feedback. We'll equally be talking to Nicholas Kimboi, who is the regional director of the Kenya Red Cross in the Rift Valley region in regards to the response so far outlined by the government in Elgeyo-Marakwet County and West Pokot. And equally, we will be talking to June and Zachary, who are in quarantine at the Kenya Medical Training College in regard to the government, of course, enforcement of the order for mandatory quarantine. And we'll be talking to Professor George Wajakoya, who is a lawyer advocate of the High Court in regard to the plan by the government as it responds to COVID-19 pandemic. And later on News Compass, we'll be talking to Simon Kimutai and Edwin Mukabala, both who are stakeholders in the public transport industry in the country, and to be specific here in Nairobi County. We have all that lined up for you here on the broadcast, and thank you for joining us. We start off with this. The government has moved to change perceptions about the coronavirus pandemic in the country by seeking to end stigmatization that those that recover from the disease might likely face. But is this the case of a little too late that's coming from the government? Our reporter Eric Munene looks at what the government is pushing for vis-a-vis how those who are already, of course, who have recovered from the pandemic are feeling within the spheres of the society.
With growing concerns over the conditions and manner under which Kenyans in quarantine centers live.
We saw like 2 buses coming in carrying people, and these people, some of the people, they had no shoes, they were brought from different polices.
The government is changing its strategy in the war against coronavirus.
I would also like to appeal to our security personnel and those charged with law enforcement to ensure that we continue to exercise great caution and a high level of understanding when we're engaging with those who are in quarantine facilities.
Making a huge shift from making the centers appear as detention centers for those flouting directives issued by the government.
Since they will have something to report regarding coronavirus, we'll oblige them by taking them to Bagathi, where they can report.
To asking Kenyans to accept that the coronavirus is a new reality that they have to live with, one that is more of a health issue and not of a criminal nature.
Contracting coronavirus is not a crime. All of us have a potential risk of contracting the disease.
The government's about turn coming days after an unknown number of people in quarantine at the Kenya Medical Training College headquarters in Nairobi escaped in unclear circumstances.
But what we have done is not to try and criminalize the quarantine process. One, we have tried to improve the conditions in the quarantine facilities. And now with the availability of the test kits, as soon as you arrive within the quarantine facility, is to fast track the process of testing you. For those who test negative, of course, they are quickly released and advised to continue self-quarantine at home.
The video clip which caught the attention of the head of state has been widely shared online, with the president promising stern action against those involved. According to the Public Health Act, a person who is forcefully quarantined does not necessarily have a right to be released from the quarantine, but has a right to demand some sort of adjudicative process to determine whether the quarantine is justified.
We have workers who are coming from outside, and they are working. They are the one cleaning our toilets, cleaning our rooms. They go to Kibra, they take the public matatus. Some of them, they don't have any protective gear. Some of them, they don't use masks. Some of them, you will find them walking around, they don't have gloves, and they're mingling with us.
The Act states that a person can be placed on the place of isolation and detained there until, in the opinion of the medical officer of health, they are free from infection or able to be discharged without danger to the public health.
Quarantine is meant to serve the greater public good in ensuring that we protect our country. We therefore must urge you, fellow Kenyans, to join us in ensuring that we do not stigmatize those who are sent to quarantine facilities and even those who have recovered from this disease.
But even as the government moves to show Kenyans the importance of being quarantined in the interest of public health, questions might be raised regarding treating criminal offences as health issues, with those arrested past curfew hours being taken to quarantine facilities. Eric Nene, Ebru TV.
Still in regard to the COVID-19 pandemic, health unions in the country have vowed to go on a strike or down their tools if the Minister of Health does not address the plight of healthcare professionals in the country. The medics claim that there has been, of course, shortage or lack of adequate attention from the government in regards to inequality in the health sector, with some of them being paid higher while others are poorly paid, yet they do almost the same amount of work. The medics have also complained that they are being arrested by police officers across the country and placed under mandatory quarantine during the curfew hours.
These are the frontline soldiers who are battling an invisible enemy that has killed thousands around the globe. The health unions, led by the Kenya Union of Clinical Officers, Peterson Washira, have claimed that there are some health workers who are being overlooked, especially during this period when they are required the most.
Tukiweza kuangalia hizi vigezo tatu, tumeona ya kwamba ambao wanapewa ile kubwa zaidi wako nambari 4 kwa laini. Walio pale mbele wanapewa 3,000.
According to the heads of the health union, currently there are some health workers who are receiving a risk allowance ranging from 3,000, which is the lowest, while others are receiving 20,000, which is the highest.
The only 17 cutters are employed on dubious contracts. One cutter is not employed on those dubious contracts. Why discrimination? How are you having your sense in your mind when you are putting a Kenyan to earn 15,000 shillings under the current situation? When you go to the Ministry of Health, you will get every PA there is a medical doctor. We have more than 70 doctors in Afia House. I don't know whether we have a hospital in Afia House or what is it. Can they remove those doctors to go and work?
The health unions further claim that there are some health workers who are being mistreated by police officers during curfew hours as they make their way home.
The government has not provided any transport for these health workers, including this time of curfew, which have resulted to police robbing and actually mishandling our professionals. We have several of them who have already been arrested and been put for mandatory quarantine, which should not happen.
The unions have now given a 7-day notice to the Ministry of Health as they vow to bring all services in the sector to a halt. This comes even as health workers in Garissa and Kakamega counties down their tools for not receiving their salaries this month.
We are giving 7 days to the government, and this included the Ministry of Health and the county government, that all those people that you are using currently, paying them 15,000, offering services 24 hours, we are saying that they must be put in a proper structure.
The health sector was allocated 40 billion to combat the deadly virus that has already infected over 300 people in the country. If the heads of some of these health workers stay true to their word, this will hamper the fight against COVID-19 as cases here in the country continue to soar. Abdikadir, Ebru TV, Nairobi County.
Now, majority of Kenyans have decried an appeal to the government to intervene by suspending rent payment following the coronavirus pandemic. Kenyans, particularly slum dwellers, say meeting daily expenses has become a double tragedy to them after losing their jobs over the dwindling state of the economy following the coronavirus pandemic, which has seen some companies close down and many Kenyans losing their jobs. Our reporter Jeff Khaimba has the details of that update.
It's about 10 a.m. in the morning. We are led into this Mabati makeshift in Kawangware in Nairobi County. We meet Alice, a mother of 5 children, doing her daily chores before she lets us in her single house. Later on, we are joined by her husband Levi Feather, the breadwinner in the family. They both share the experiences about the deadly coronavirus that has brought about agony in their house, ranging from meeting the daily expenses.
Mambo na rent hapo kwetu imekuwa ni lazima.
Hii corona sasa, unajua kwa watu wenye tunatafuta vibarua imekuwa ngumu. Na jinsi unaona tukiwa na watoto hivi, mtoto hawezi jua kama tuna chakula ama hakuna.
Their single house is divided into 2, with a curtain separating the bedroom, the kitchen, and the sitting room, a clear indication they cannot afford a bigger house.
Okay, mimi mwenyewe hufanya kazi ya security, na wakati corona iliingia, nimepewa masiku za kwenda kazi. Kwa wiki niende once a week. Siku yenye umeenda kazi ndio utalipwa sasa. Unafanya hesabu zako, unajua kwa mwezi napata tuseme kwa mfano 25,000. So inabidi urudi ukalculate.
Besides paying rent, meeting the daily expenses for the majority of the Kenyans is history. The government insists all the Kenyans must wear the face masks and wash their hands regularly as a way of curbing the spread of COVID-19. For Levi, he has to buy at least 5 masks a day.
Maski hapa Kawangware hakuna bei nyingine japokuwa utanunua na 50 each. Ikifika unatakana ununue ya mtoto, ununue mwingine, ununue kwa mwingine, unajua hiyo ni 150. Na 150 hiyo pengine ndio ilikuwa nazo.
Kama ni ukweli kuna misaada wenye wanaweza kutusaidia, wafikie kila mtu. Vile walifanya tu mambo ya census ikuwe ni hiyo.
Another challenge the slum dwellers face during this COVID-19 pandemic is how the learners will be able to continue with their education, with the Education Cabinet Secretary Professor George Magoha urging the learners to embrace the technology.
Jo wakisema mambo ya mtandao nini, hasa mimi iko 6, huyo 3, huyu Prionet. Nataka ochi yake, na tunataka kusoma sisi wote.
Levi's neighbors face a similar intrigues. They also live hand to mouth.
Ilikuwa tu hii mambo ya corona. Ndio akatuambia tuende, yeye anaogopa corona, tunaweza muambukisha vile tunatoka kijijini tukienda huko. Tunaweza muambukisha, sasa akatukataza.
Tumekaa kwa nyumba hivi. Hatuna vile tunaweza pata pesa ya nyumba, kulipa rent, mara chakula, mara sasa.
Tribulation for the low-income earners remains a major challenge, even as the government considers implementing further tough measures to curb the coronavirus.
Where I am right now, I've been given 75% rent by the landlord himself. But if you are forcing the landlords to forgo rent, and then they have a mortgage on that particular property, they are also paying taxes on that particular property.
Professor Jojo Jakoya says it is the prerogative of the government to put in a proper and enabling environment for its citizens.
But at the same time also he has a moral duty and responsibility of giving a stimulus or talking to the mortgage lenders to ask them, look, we shall give you this kind of this, but please don't charge rent, and let us see how we go.
By now, the government has set aside 40 billion Kenyan shillings meant to deal with the coronavirus in the country. As the government rolls out the program of assisting the needy members of the society, the big concern here is whether indeed the billions of money set aside will have to reach the targeted group in the society. Reporting for Ebru TV, I'm Jeff Haimba.
Thank you, Jeff, for that update. Now, police have arrested 2 people who escaped from a coronavirus quarantine center at the Kenya Medical Training College. The 2 are among 50 people who were filmed jumping over a wall at the quarantine center, attracting condemnation from CS Mutahi Kagwe. But many Kenyans who are in quarantine centers across the country decry about the deplorable condition, stressful exercise, financial burden, and the risk of infection of COVID-19. We now cross over, link up with Professor George Wojokoya, who is an advocate of the High Court here in the country, and equally speak to 2 Kenyans who are quarantined at the Kenya Medical Training College. And the interesting bit about that is that they have been free to go home after testing negative for the pandemic, but they still are holed up at the facility. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
How are you?
I appreciate your time. Gentlemen and a lady, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for making time on the broadcast. Coming to you first, Professor George Wojokoya, you have spoken about the issue in regard to human rights violations as regards the mandatory quarantine by the government, and that has been the instance ever since the confirmation of the first case in the country of COVID-19. I want you to speak to me about the mismatch on what the government says is happening, what it says is happening, and what actually is happening.
First of all, thank you very much, and I do pity my friends who are here with us, that it's very illegal to detain somebody without justifiable cause. If somebody is not sick, then why do you have to detain that person? That's number one. Number two, if you look at the Bill of Rights and the Constitution in general, and the world principles of human rights and humanity, you cannot come up without a clear-cut policy. You cannot come up and make an informed decision which has not been questioned qualitatively or even quantified, or where people's views have been taken together and people come up with a conclusion that if this kind of thing happens, then it happens. Who made the decision to detain these 2 Kenyans who are not affected? And what does he gain from it? What kind of impact is there between the 2 Kenyans who have been detained, their families, and Kenyans in general, and the international community? It's very wrong. It's very wrong to come up and make a decision, and yet at the same time you have closed lawyers out, as people cannot be one of the group classified as essential providers. And that informs you how weak this government is. It informs you how autocratic these decisions are, that they are interfering with the fundamental rights of human beings, of Kenyans, or any other person, by detaining these people unlawfully. Did they get a court order to detain them? If it was mandatory for them to be quarantined and they are found not to be sick, then why put them there?
Oh, all right, Professor, thank you for getting your side of the story. But if I may hear from the persons who are at the KMTC facility, and I'm talking to, in this case, June and Zachary. Coming to you first, June. My producer informed me that you were supposed to go home following the tests that have turned negative. Why are you still at the facility?
Okay, so thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. We were indeed supposed to go home after the test that turned negative. So we tested yesterday and we got our results today, and we got negative results. So the issue came in because of the payment. So there seems to be some sort of breakdown in communication between the Ministry of Health and the management of the center. But that was actually smoothed over tonight after we protested, and the management came and confirmed to us that indeed we would be going home tomorrow and we would not be paying, because most of the people who are in this particular center are not people who are able to pay. So that's why perhaps they wanted to make us stay for a longer period of time, but it transpires that that's not going to be the case. It seems that we will be released tomorrow free of charge, according to our understanding.
Your perspective to the reason as to why you are there, what do you think then might have been the informing point of your stay at the facility even when you have tested negative? Is it because of the financial burden?
There were a few people for which it was the financial burden, but then also the government was taking extra precautions because they were concerned that there were a few positive cases that had been detected. My main issue with them was the mode of communication and how they were communicating with us. They weren't very clear. They were leaving us in the dark for long stretches of time, and so people were getting agitated. They didn't give us clear reasons as to why they were leaving us here, but it transpired that it was because a few positive cases had been found in previous tests. So they thought it was fit for us to remain in this center until all cases turned to be negative, or at least they were sure that most people were safe. So that's the reason they were keeping us here. My issue with them was that they kept us in conditions that were not very good, and additionally, they did not communicate well with us. So that was a very big issue.
Oh, okay, let me now cross over to the other gentleman who is equally at the Kenya Medical Training College facility, which is a quarantine center that the government has designated to quarantine people it suspects are COVID-19 suspects or have contracted or have come into contact with persons who might be positive. In regard to your stay there, what is the status and the condition of the facility?
Oh, thanks so much for the opportunity. The condition is not very well because, as I said earlier, we are sharing the washrooms, we are sharing the bathrooms, we are queuing to get our meals, and we are queuing to do our temperatures. And the worst part is whereby, we mingle each and every day with cleaners who are coming from outside and who are coming to do our rooms, who are coming to clean around the corridors and everything. So we feel that, we are not safe to be here. So that is why we were really pushing that the best place to be is to be at home.
I presume you have tested positive for the pandemic following the second test that was done by the government. Why are you still there?
We were here basically for the financial reasons, because today, as my colleague John mentioned before, that we protested until we have to get the communication directly from the chair of the KMTC. He's the one who came and cleared that, tomorrow we have to leave after we protested. But the bills were so huge. Like, example, my bill was around 62,000. So I was supposed to pay that.
Okay, and I presume, of course, a government official or government officials do come and inspect the status of the facility and, of course, check up on you guys because they have the responsibility, the authority, the mandate to know your welfare. Have you raised these issues that regard the financial burden, the deplorable state of the facility you are in or where you are caged at the moment?
We have repeatedly raised these issues with government officials, particularly about the state of the facilities. And that's another point of concern. They didn't do much about them because, as Zach mentioned, we had to share facilities, we had to share bathrooms, and my concern is if they continue to quarantine people in the future in such conditions, it's quite dangerous. So we have raised the issue, but not much was done about it, and that was a concern of ours.
All right, yes, and then I pass over to the gentleman to respond still on that question in regard to raising the concern with the government officials, if there is, of course, or there is a visit from the government officials in regard to checking up on you guys.
This is I think this is a failure part of our government, because most of the communication we were getting from the TV, from the media, and from the social media, but there is no single day anybody from the Ministry of Health, apart from the doctors, who came and visit the facility and see the condition that we are in. So this was really disappointing from our side, and that is why we were raising this concern each and every time, because for them extending our stay here without knowing the condition that we are living in, that was the part that they were failing also.
Okay, let me now cross over to Professor George Wajakoya. There has been an aspect about the mass testing issue, which was planned by the government, and then that goal post was shifted in defense of the government, of course, to capacity questions, saying that we can't do that in terms of the mass testing of the government. Is the muddled messaging from the government's end perhaps causing more confusion among the public? And can the government carry the people along with it in the course of this pandemic in addressing perhaps what appears to be a virus that's crippling not only the Kenyan economy, but the global one?
First of all, the government did not have a clear-cut preparedness policy. Just like what has happened in New York, or what happened in New York during the September 11th, the chief of police in New York State prepared New Yorkers for any kind of eventuality, and it occurred, and you can see how that was worked. In our country, as much as we claim that we are a developing nation, we have all the resources available. We have our army, we have the National Police Service, and even we have the disaster management units, which ought to have prepared and created kind of reason for Kenyans to be aware of any kind of eventuality. At the moment, we have a lot of resources coming in from foreign countries, and the issue of accountability is wanting. At the same time, if the president is empowered under the emergency power as enshrined in the Constitution, that in case anything comes out, then he can actually declare an emergency or otherwise for public interest, kind of, which is an overriding principle. But where you come in and you do not, you take the laws into your hands, you demean other section that is involved in calculating human rights, like the lawyers, and then you set them aside so that they cannot take responsibility or to their oath of office as per the Supreme Court regulations and go out there and safeguard liberties of Kenyans, then you go wrong. One thing we don't understand, and it's not only these cases that you are facing today of the two, Ms. Yvonne, Zachary Orina, and my lady sister, and I'm sorry for you, to being there instead of being at home. What they ought to do is to put enough resources in the people and assure them, putting them in camps, putting them in so-called quarantine centers when they are not wanted to be there, when it's not wanting for them to be there. It's like diminishing them into a concentration camp. And there's no reason why that should not be a concentration camp, especially if innocent Kenyans who have been caught up in the mayhem are put in a place where their relatives are not even allowed to come in, and as you can listen from what the two are saying, it's deplorable. Therefore, the government ought to come out and give the monies and take responsibility of whatever is going on. You cannot now come in and trade into people. Where do you expect poor people to get money to pay for this kind of quarantine? The government ought to have deployed the resources like it has been done in the US, where well-wishers are coming up to help in the situation instead of demeaning the characters of the people.
Important point, even as we finish up, because it's very pertinent that the economic aspect comes into play here. And there has been a concern since 2013, and this, of course, disregards accusations of mishandling and mismanagement of the economy ever since the Uhuru Ruto government took over power in 2013. Therefore, do you think the legitimate, in terms of the aspect about the mandatory quarantine, was not a well thought out framework with which the government is set to contain the COVID-19 pandemic? And are you saying from your earlier statement that legitimate the decision might not have been, there might have been no legitimate decision and reasoning behind what the government is doing to Kenyans at the KMTC?
Well, the whole thing is just a confusion. Look at the people who are actually taking part in the process, particularly people in the healthcare industry and security industry, particularly the police and the nurses and the doctors. Has the government come up with a blueprint to say that those involved in this kind of vice should be given more allowances so that they can? Look at the policemen who have resorted to beating people up. Are they making their frustration on innocent Kenyans? If they were paid, if they were given allowances to come in and do whatsoever, then that would be a thing of the past. Look at the landlords now. There's this mayhem of people coming up and saying that landlords should actually reduce rent. What about their equity? What about the interest and the mortgages they are paying? Why can't the government come up and speak to the lending facilities, lending mortgage companies to reduce interest rates either, or for the government to put a stimulus in these people so that people can actually know that the government is taking care of them? Well, the issue of VAT is not enough. The issue of pay as you earn is not enough. The president should come up and say, you know what, we are all in it. He should even ask those who have been going to the church every Sunday to give big donations to come and donate to these kind of facilities. So the whole confusion is there. But what is the positive part of it? The positive part of it is that we are learning from what we did not expect to happen. And also, though I'm not that much religious, people should go and pray, because this is a calamity that actually has its sources maybe to God. God might be annoyed with the human mankind, and that's why he's bringing in. But innocent people should not actually be put in incarceration unless they're defying the orders of government at this time of need, whereby we should all come out and let common sense prevail.
Asante sana.
It doesn't now matter that mean that Kenyans should now come in and take advantage of what's going on. We should come together, listen to the president, and do what we can. But at the same time, also the president should come out and say, you know what, this is what we have, and come in and let's move this towards this direction.
Asante sana, Professor George Wajakoya. Thank you so much for your input here on the broadcast in regard to the response by the government and, of course, the concerns you have raised earlier in the story that our reporter Jeff Khaimba has done. And thank you to June and Zachary. We appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us here on the broadcast from the Kenya Medical Training College Quarantine Facility that is designated by the government. Moving ahead, though, the government's directive to work from home and observe social distancing is increasingly proven to be easier said than done, more so by locals in densely populated areas, especially in the capital, Nairobi. In Kawangware, for instance, even with over 5 confirmed COVID-19 cases, locals remain unmoved, with some not even sure of the government's announcement. Here's that story by our reporter, Kenneth Kazungu.
And you are doing a commendable job. May God bless you. Because
about 2 weeks ago, we went to Kawangware area, one of the densely populated areas in Nairobi County, to check the status of observance of government directives. We established that social distancing here is a mile apart from the reality. About a week ago, we did a story here at the heart of Kawangware, where we established that residents here were not observing social distancing or wearing of masks, which are said to be one of the key ways to stop the spread of COVID-19. And 4 days after the Ministry of Health announced that 3 confirmed coronavirus cases are from here in Kawangware, we came back to see what changed and if the residents this time actually are observing social distancing and wearing of masks, and how that particular announcement changed their lives. And after 2 weeks, we went back to the area where we found a classical case of same script, different days.
Ogopa tuogopi juu hii ugonjwa na lazima tufanye kazi.
Sisi hatuogopi juu saa tukikaa kwa nyumba hakuna pesa na vile tujitokeze tutafute tu.
Business here is up and running with some residents remaining unmoved. They say their daily survival struggle is what drives them out each and every day.
Serikali inasema tukae nyumbani, lakini haitupatii plan B, tutakula nini? Maana kama mimi napata daily bread kwa hii kazi yangu. Na familia zaidi ya watu 12 wanaonitegemea, nikae nyumbani. Serikali hakuna hata mkono kidogo inanyosha kunisaidia. Kukaa nyumbani siwezi, nitakufa na njaa na familia yangu.
Simebadilisha, imeleta umaskini. Imeleta umaskini kubwa sana. Sasa hatuna kazi. Tunabangaisha tu. Tunatafuta za kukula na hatupati. Sasa hii pesa serikali imetoa inafikia wanyonge aje? Inatufikia kwa njia gani?
With some saying they have to do what they have to do.
Watu wanatembea sababu hawana namna ya kupata chakula, lakini tunatembea tukiokopa. Si ati tumefurahi, tunaokopa. Wakifanya lockdown na wapatia watu chakula, tutakubali.
Our visit to Kawangware came after the number of confirmed coronavirus cases here shot to over 5.
Kawangware iko watu wengi, walianza na mtu moja, wakaenda 3, wakaenda wengine 2 na tunaendelea.
Hiyo ni kama wale wanaongea ni wale watu wa propaganda. Hapa kwa soko sisi ukiangalia hata wewe mwenyewe unaona vile soko yetu iko smart na iko sawa. Kila mtu akiingia ananawa mkono, anavaa mask. So hiyo ni ile mambo ya borojo unasikia ati watu wamekufa Kawangware kwa ajili ya corona. Si kweli.
Others want the government to walk the talk.
Ukiangalia wakati wa uchaguzi, t-shirt tunapewa nyingi na kofia na nini, lakini serikali hata hii kitu ya 20 bob sijaona wakisupply hapa Kawangware.
Tunasikia pesa imetolewa, lakini hii pesa inaonekana inapeana kwa kujuana. Sisi wanyonge hatupati hata kidogo.
and are calling for mass testing.
Alafu wafanye mass testing. Wakifanya mass testing ndio wapate nani ako na coronavirus, alafu anaenda. Lakini wale wenye hawana wakae nyumbani wapate chakula huko kutoka kwa serikali.
Now, Kenya's failure to put in place a comprehensive disaster preparedness policy means its response to high-risk events such as droughts, floods, epidemics, and major accidents tend to be slow, poorly coordinated, and unnecessarily expensive. A draft policy framework of the National Disaster Management Policy had been forwarded to the Cabinet in September 2009 and was due for discussion in Parliament. The policy's main recommendations included setting up a national disaster strategy, stockpiles of food to add to the grain reserves, disaster trust funds, district contingency plans, and insurance initiatives. With attention on West Pokot and Elgeyo Marakwet counties following mudslides which over the weekend caused deaths, how will the government recognize the need to establish an institutional, policy and legal framework to effectively manage disaster risk and preparedness? We are joined live from Elgeyo Marakwet County by the Rift Valley Regional Coordinator of the Kenya Red Cross Society, Nicholas Kemboi. Thank you so much for joining us here on the broadcast and making time. I appreciate your company. Well, if the sound is okay on your end, can you hear me? Nicholas Kemboi. All right.
Yes, I can get you, sir.
All right. Going ahead into it, there appears to be a policy gap in regards to Kenya's preparedness state for such a tragedy or an incident of such magnitude. In regards to the policy framework, which from the onset in previous instances have tended to be ad hoc and short-term, how are we likely to venture into the foreseeable future when our response is so slow because of lacking coordination? We seem to be having a technical glitch in regard to reaching out to Nicholas Kemboi. Hopefully we can get him when that issue is addressed. So we can move on to the next story, which is in regard to the government's initiative in regard to the Ministry of Interior and Coordination of National Government. And that is, of course, in particular in regards to decongestion of prison centers across the country. Now, the government is taking the war against the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic in the country to prisons across the country. One of the other densely populated areas, Interior CS Dr. Fred Matiang'i says they are embarking on a mission to beef up sanitization capacities in prison facilities across the country on advisory of the National Response Coordination Committee to COVID-19. Prisons are considered to be one of the choke points and has since banned visiting in bid to contain the spread of the pandemic across the country.
Today, we are flagging off the distribution of building and plumbing materials worth about 12 million shillings, again to carry out the minor renovation works to improve our sanitary facilities. This is as a result of a joint rapid assessment carried out in our various prisons that identified our dilapidated sanitary facilities as one of the challenges towards the efforts we are making to prevent the spread of COVID-19 from within the prison services. To making sure that our prison service is the cleanest in the world, that it has got all the sanitation facilities that we require, that we feed our inmates, because every morning and every evening when we have our calls, usually with the Commissioner General and the PS, these are the things that concern us. That we have built up our health capability to attend to the health and hygiene of our inmates. That now we address very important issues like the rights of our inmates and how we look after them and what facilities we provide them. We want to go to a new level now as we move forward so that we don't deal with these things, some of these headaches that we inherited, as a result of, I must be frank, some crazy management in the past. So I'm happy.
On that note, we hit the break here on the broadcast. When we come back, the other stories we have for you include the matatu operators and commuters' demand in the county of Nakuru County, the sports news, and we'll be engaging with stakeholders in the transport industry here in Nairobi County, the public transport industry, with regards to measures put in place by the stakeholders in containing the COVID-19 pandemic in the capital, Nairobi, which is the epicenter here in regard to the confirmed cases of COVID-19 across the country, which the number now stands at 320 following the confirmation of 17 cases earlier today by the Chief Administrative Secretary at the Ministry of Health, Dr. Mercy Mwangangi. The number is 0791478990, the hashtag on Twitter, News Compass. Later, we'll sample some of your feedback on the 40920 shortcode here on the broadcast. Stay tuned.